Hello, Substack. I am Jessica Huckabay, and this is the Ecology of a Writer live broadcast series. Our first guest is Julia
Yay!
Washington. Julie and I have been interacting around our various posts and notes and writings and felt an affinity for each other as soon as we were connecting here on Substack and invited each other to do a live broadcast. So here we are, and I see someone is watching us.
Mhm.
YR Abisi, welcome. I'm not sure if there's another name that you'd like to be called, but please feel free if you're joining in to write anything in the comments, any questions. Yay, it's happening!
Yay!
Um, and this is my first live here on Substack. And Julie, it's not your first live on Substack. You did another one, you said, right?
So actually, it's my first live on Substack, but I actually did a live on TikTok not too long
Gotcha.
ago. Mhm.
Gotcha. And I was just telling Julia that I did a whole bunch of lives since the beginning of live broadcasts anywhere. I
Mhm.
did a bunch of lives on Pandora when it was the first platform that had any live broadcasting. And then I did a lot of live broadcasting on Facebook for quite a lot of years. And I've had podcasts and things like that. So it's a natural continuation as I'm picking all of this back up in my writerly form. Um, and moving towards more fiction writing and writing and talking about writing in general, it makes sense for us to do some lives for the Ecology of a Writer series. So here we are. Yay. Thank you for joining us. So let's go ahead and start out. Julie and I have been reading each other's writings and coming up with questions. And I wanted to start out with some questions for you, Julia, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Um, I've really been enjoying your writing, and I know that we talked about you're preparing an offering to support other, mostly women, right? Is it all? Is it
Yeah,
just
it's mainly for women. Yeah.
okay? So, an offering that you have for women who want support. Uh, could you tell us a little bit more about that? What kind of support you're offering in this offering coming up?
Mhm. So the Glow Up Reset is kind of like if anyone's ever familiar with my writing, like you can kind of see the development of where I went from this stage, where it was like I was kind of talking about different issues around love, grief, different things like that. And from there, it kind of transitioned to okay, let's reflect. Let's go inward. Let's see what the issues are. Let's try to bring them out and heal them. And now I see that my writing is evolving to okay, I'm ready to turn the page. I'm ready to go to the next chapter. So it was interesting when I was seeing all of that. I'm like, okay, the Glow Up Reset, for the woman who's rebuilding her life. And honestly, I wrote it because I lived it, and honestly, I'm still living it. I'm like at the tail end of it. And it's kind of like it makes me uncomfortable to do it, honestly, because I feel like I have to be vulnerable. But I already do that on Substack anyway, the different writings, reflective pieces and stuff. So I'm like, why not? I'm no guru or anything like that, honestly, but just kind of share what I've learned from the different things that I've been through and kind of impart that wisdom. And honestly, it's like community for me too. I feel like when you find people going through the similar things, it's like it's healing for everyone.
Yeah. The thing is, I've learned over the years that, when we need like a professional who has a certain degree with training and a license and like that, we know we need to go get a therapist or
Hmm.
a doctor or a psychiatrist or someone like that. We look for somebody. But sometimes what we need is a peer. Okay.
Hmm.
We need somebody who's gone through it, so a similar process like we're going through, and we need a group of people who are going through that same process with us. And somebody maybe who's gone through it recently and come to the other side when you're at the beginning of it, right?
Hmm.
And so those types of peer support, it sounds like mutual support. It sounds like what you're offering. You found some
Exactly.
wisdom in your process, um, and things that have helped you to grow? And we're getting some cheering on from YR in the comments. Yes, that's why you're here. That's great. Um, and so that kind of mutual support, that kind of peer support is so crucial, and it's something that we don't get, I don't think, um, in our hello Crescent Curations, welcome. Yeah, we don't get that kind of peer support oftentimes in our real life interactions and communities and relationships. We don't get as much of that as we might need. You know
You
what I mean?
know, yeah, I'm learning that it's kind of like sometimes we do it where you feel like someone hasn't been through what you've been through. So it's
Yeah,
kind of like, even though you don't say it out loud, it's kind of like, well, how can they relate to me? Because they're just speaking from a place of maybe textbook or whatever. And it's like, not that with me. It's like, I've actually lived this. And it's
right.
kind of interesting. It's like, because you can kind of see my progression. And I'm not saying I have all the answers because I don't. I'm still going through stuff. It's things I'm still trying to work through and heal through. But it's kind of like I started it with the Substack, just doing my reflections, things that happened to me around love, grief, just different issues that I had. And it's kind of like, let me just put that out there. But it was interesting. Even years before I knew I was ever going to do something like this, I started doing that. And then it was like, okay, I don't want to end with just opening it where it's no answer. And even then, it wasn't an answer, but it's just like you're not alone. So people can
Yeah.
feel seen. I think that's the community aspect where it's like to let you know you're not alone in this. You're seen. Not only you're seen, you're understood. I went through it too. I'm still going through it. And I think it'll be very beneficial for the women, that want to join it.
I think so too. Yeah, it's just, having especially somebody who's reading your writing on Substack and can relate to what you're saying there,
Mm-hmm.
that they found your voice speaks to them,
Mm.
right? So that's a really great connection between what you're writing and then this offering. Will writing be a part of the program a lot, or will you be encouraging the people that join to do a lot of writing, and that's how you're sharing each other's process with each other?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, so I kind of was thinking in a mindset of like, who were you then, who are you now, and who do you want to become? And so
Hmm.
I have the Glow Up Journal, I have the Glow Up Reset, which is the main workbook, Glow into Gratitude. So it's kind of going to be your main like workbook, the Glow Up Reset, and then I'm going to be bringing those different companion books in at different times. And
Mm.
it's like journal prompts, it's like little activities in
Oh, I
there.
love a good workbook journal.
Right,
Woo!
right. Honestly, what's good about journals, and I think that's what's good about writing, because it's this thing of sometimes you feel more comfortable putting it down on paper and pen or even typing it because it's like, well, this is just between me and myself. No one has to see it if I don't want them to see it. So I
Yeah.
think you're more, I guess, vulnerable, more vulnerable and more willing to be, I guess, open, because it's like, okay, well, if I don't want to share this, then I don't have to share it. So,
Yeah, exactly. Right, but you've shared it with yourself. You've gotten clarity with yourself. Just writing it down can organize my thoughts, organize my feelings, find find words for those feelings. Like for
mhm,
me, especially when I'm writing poetry, or yeah, mostly when I'm writing poetry more, like when I get into that poetic voice, which
mm.
I see a lot of in your writing, that poetic,
I love some poetry.
right? There's a kind of prose where it's poetic prose. I did a little bit of that in my nonfiction article that I just posted just before we started live.
Mhm,
Um, to because there's a flowing of feelings that can happen, that typical prose, like correct prose, right?
mhm,
Grammatically correct prose, it
mhm,
doesn't always capture it, you know. It doesn't always capture the feeling, but the flow of the feeling, the movement of the feeling through the body, it has a different rhythm. It doesn't always follow grammatical rules or punctuation
mhm.
rules and like that. Um, so I love it when that comes through in the poetry. And, I often talk about the word bubbling up from below, the feeling bubbling up, looking for a word that matches what it's trying to express, you know. And
Well,
just that
yeah.
process, whether you share it or not, whether someone
Mhm.
else reads it or hears it, just that process of putting a word to the feeling, I find very helpful.
Poetry is like the sweetener, right? I'm a firm believer you can say just about, not everything, but just about anything. It's just how you frame it and how you phrase it. And I kind of like to play with words. Like I'll have a main idea of, okay, what I'm trying to convey, right? And depending on the topics, like, okay, well, how do I want to translate this? Because, like you said, poetry is sometimes it's like dreamy and it's, you can kind of give these different adjectives and you can really pull someone in with that and then you can make your point and it's still that sweetener. It's not as harsh as just me being direct saying that to you, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. It does add the sweetener, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like the spoonful of sugar that helps that medicine go down.
Hmm. Exactly.
Here we are, little Mary Poppins for you. I don't think Mary Poppins was the first person to talk about the spoonful of sugar. I don't think she was.
Probably not. No, I don't think so.
I think that's a time-honored tradition that she just picked up and put in there,
Hmm.
the author of that one. Well, good. So another question I wanted to ask you is, we've talked now about how writing helps us to get through whatever transformation or growth we're getting through and can be a helpful tool when we're supporting each other to go through those transitions, challenges, transformations. Um, I'm curious how you've written a bit about motherhood in some of your pieces, and I'd really like to hear what motherhood has taught you around all of that personal growth and transformation for you as a person. Um, not of course you learn how to be a mother, right? But then what does
Hmm.
it teach you about your inner growth as a person, and um, how will you transmit that wisdom, that growth from motherhood to the other women who join your program?
Motherhood is interesting. Is I mean, it teaches you everything. It shows your strengths. It shows your weaknesses. It also shows me that I can't inject, what I want for them. You have to kind of look at them as a person, and then kind of, even I have two kids, right? The way I may parent one has to be a little different than how I parent the other one. Honestly, my oldest is a little bit more sensitive. My other one, he's really boy. He's really like tough and stuff like that. So I kind of always, especially since they're getting a little older, they're not teenagers or anything like that. I'm always with the mindset of, okay, giving them the tools. How can I prepare them? Because one day they're going to be young men, young adults, right? And I want them to go out into the world and have a set of tools, that they can use or whatever. So it's like, while I have them, wisdom can I impart, in them? And I'm always talking about things that occurred, age appropriate, like in my life. And I'm kind of like, well, I had to learn this the hard way because of XYZ. I remember having a conversation with my oldest and I was telling him, he did something. I'm like, it's good that you kind of recognize when a friendship it's not for you. I said, I had to more so learn that the hard way where I kind of clung to people.
Mm.
I kind of wanted to, even when you see, the red flags and they're waving like this and it's still like whoosh, you
Oh,
didn't see
that's
that
nothing.
one?
Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it can go back to a lot of things, people pleasing and different things. And so it's kind of like, I'm, so they teach me too to bring that in. And so it's not just of, I'm just teaching, I'm just saying, no, it's we're cohesive thing we're learning together. And also with the transformation, it's kind of giving them the tools like I do with my kids that I've learned, to be honest, from some lessons, I had to learn the hard way, but
Mm-hmm.
not every lesson needs to be learned the hard way. So it's kind of, to me, wise if you see someone that's kind of gone through something and they're taking the time to impart some wisdom on you to kind of sit in and listen. And it may be applicable to you, it may not. So,
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah, I love the part about that you said about each person, each child, right? Your one
mhm,
son being more sensitive, the other one being more tough, is
mhm,
going to respond. to a different kind of support, right? Is
Mhm.
need a different kind of support. And um, I really, when I join those kinds of, or as I've prone to do, create mutual
Mhm.
support type of
Yeah.
community. What I like, what I've learned is so important over the years of experience that I've had participating in those types of group support situations is to um, be clear about the type of support that I want to receive, that I know works best for me,
Mhm.
and that I've learned works best for me. And then also to ask the other people that we're trying to have a mutual support relationship with what type of support works well for them, and even guiding them through the process of discovering what type of support works for them. So, I may have more experience than
Mhm.
some other people in a mutual support group. I may notice that, that type of support didn't seem to work for that person, whether it's support I'm giving them or support someone else is giving them. And so finding ways to discuss, oh, if there's friction or conflict in our mutual support setting where it's not quite feeling right, it's feeling a little off, let's look at the type of support we're giving each
Mhm.
other. Am I giving you advice when you don't really want advice? Because, hey, Galactic Writer, good to see you.
Mhm.
So, giving unsolicited advice to some people is a real irritant. They don't want
Mhm.
advice, right? Like me, oftentimes I don't want advice. I want you to
Okay.
listen and encourage me to find my own solutions, right? I tell my therapist this all the time. Like, okay, I want to find the solution
Mhm.
myself because I've learned over the years of plenty of people having plenty of mentors that tell me the solutions they think I should, implement. If I do their solution, it may or may not work, and oftentimes after they're no longer my mentor, I have to go back through that same lesson again and find my own unique version of the solution that's going to work for me for that specific problem. If I just lean on the mentor and get their solution and do what they learned was
Mhm.
worked, it doesn't always stick. I have to go back and revisit that lesson. So, like, let's just cut to the chase and let me find my own solution.
I think it's kind of like this, going back to the reset the group. I think when it's in smaller numbers, right, you feel more comfortable, right? Because
Yeah,
first of all, if you're not comfortable, you're not vulnerable, you're not going to be honest. So you
right.
have to be willing to be honest first and foremost,
Yeah.
right? And so then once you feel comfortable, you'll say certain things, or speak more openly about different issues you're going through, right? And then it's not about, for me, just giving you like, oh, do this, do that. No, it's kind of having that conversation. I'm going to listen to you, like listen to see like what the issue is, and then kind of talk through it, versus, because like you said, I mean, sometimes if someone is just telling you something, sometimes depending on your personality, you're going to do the complete opposite because
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't want to, it's honestly, so it's kind of like, but I think it's better when you kind of have a conversation with someone, and it's kind of like they're saying different things, and you're like, well, okay, well, why do you think you do this? Or, what happened with that, and what was your thought process at that time, and it's kind of leaning on, and you'll kind of discover that it's based on your past, like patterns, old belief systems, different like things like that. So that's, who are you then,
Yeah.
and then it kind of, who are you now, leading into, well, maybe what did those choices and different things, where did it bring you to this
Mm.
version of yourself now? But the whole thing is, you have to be willing, to be honest and open. If not, nothing's really going to work, just in my opinion.
Oh, sure. And it's that, not being honest is a strategy that many of us learned, especially on social media, right? Of, like,
Mm,
presenting the best version of yourself, and this is how I am,
mhm,
and never getting vulnerable like we talked about earlier, like, "Oh, this is where I don't know what I'm doing. This is where I need have room to learn and grow," and having somebody to reflect with me on it and give me some potentially different ideas than I've ever thought of, a
mhm,
different perspective than I've ever seen before, can help to break us out of those old thought patterns, right? Who we were, and then give us new possibilities. So
Exactly.
some people really need that, you know, a different perspective presented to them until you build that muscle of being able to expand your perspective enough to see other possibilities than the old belief systems that you were raised with, you know. So I definitely needed that at a certain point in my development. Now, as a 56-year-old woman who's devoted her life to personal growth, I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna figure it out. I figure these solutions out myself. Just listen to me, reflect back to me what you hear me saying, and then
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So, um, so that's what I'm saying. Each person is gonna need something different, right?
exactly.
I love that you're offering that as a peer support person. Is like I'm gonna listen to you like I listen to my different kids, right? And,
Hmm.
or my different friends. I'm sure you do that with your friends. You have um, some friends are gonna, you know, be like me and be like, just listen, let me cry on your shoulder, and I'll find my own solutions. Other friends are gonna be like, tell me what to do, right?
Yeah, that was interesting. And that was kind of like what I was scared of because when I did this, honestly, like I'm vulnerable anyway with my writing, but it was kind of like I really have to. I don't know why. It was this hesitation, even though like I've always been good at giving advice and different things like that. I'm like, this is a different layer to it, different aspect.
Yeah,
And then even when I was setting this up, because I've never done anything like this before, I was like, how do I want it? Because I like to have everything kind of structured so it's not just going, haywire. And it's like, okay, I want to have like some type of group chat, right? And I think that'll really, because sometimes, when you see other people too, the community talking about things, and it's like, oh, well, she said this. So, okay, I can, I feel more comfortable. I can kind of,
right.
I can kind of say that too. And then, like I said, and then with that honesty and trust build up, I think you'll be able to get people will be able to get more out of it versus when you're just trying to do it by yourself. And like I said, even like how the books are laid out, you have like journal prompts and stuff like that.
Oh, I
But
love.
yeah, but with writing sometimes, and I've done this recently too, but I kind of was like, write something. I'm like, I don't know if I want to publish that or not because I don't know this. Most times I end up publishing it. That's just how I am. But sometimes when people write certain things and it feels real personal, it's like, okay, I'm not going to share this. It can stay here. But if it just stays there, then how is that really helping you? Sometimes you need someone
Right,
not to say if you're right or wrong, but let's talk through it. You write it out. Oh, okay. Well, and then once you kind of hear other people put their input on it, not telling you it's right or wrong or whatever, then it's kind of like you come to the own conclusion of okay, I can get through this. Here's the tools I need to do or whatever, or just to be aware of stuff. Sometimes you're not aware of things. I know for me, it was hard because I was doing certain things, and for instance, just using relationships like I had one bad relationship, right? And then it was like, okay, go into the, another relationship. And then it's like, okay, it's easy to kind of point the finger at them and say, that's the issue. But it's like, no, I don't want to keep doing that. So I need to start seriously after a while. It's like, no, I got to sit back. That's the easy way to
who's the common denominator, right? If you keep
exactly,
you're gonna be in
exactly.
the same pattern. I had that too. I was like, oh, this one seems like it's the same thing that happened with the last person.
I couldn't do it
And the
anymore.
third one is the same thing that happened
No.
with
But it's seriously, and after you see that, then you start pulling back layers. And then I didn't, when I did started out on Substack, it was just me writing, I guess, thinking I was writing into a void, just writing my feelings. And then I didn't realize at the time that it was actually helping me. It was healing me, right? You don't realize till you're midway through and you're like, okay, that's what all of this was about. At first, it just, I kind of describe it as like when I first started, it was like this itch that I needed to scratch. Like I just had a
Mhm.
lot of questions and the life that I had, it wasn't kind of really what I wanted to have, but I didn't have the language for it, I guess. I knew I like to do certain things versus other things, but it's like, okay, well, this is kind of what's acceptable. This looks good for us, the society standpoint, so why not do it? But then when I kind of started feeling like, okay, it's got to be something more, then I started digging back to different layers and stuff like that through writing. So writing does help, but I did kind of just share minds openly because that's just me.
There you
But
go.
that's a that's a me thing. But
I
it
noticed there were a few that you're like, okay, you got to pay to see this one.
yeah, I probably had it available for free and then I kind of pulled it back. Like
Right, right, right.
honestly, it's this writing piece that I'm going to be publishing on Tuesday. I kind of And I'm going to publish it. I know I am, but I kind of was like, do I want to publish it? Do I not? Because it's kind of a little different for me. Like it's more leaning into like the commentary part of Curvy Girls, but I'm like, it needs to be said. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I noticed that when I first started out, I was more vocal. I felt like I didn't hold back. And then somewhere along the way, I don't know if it was me just going through different things and trying to figure myself out. I felt like went like a little bit more inward. So it seems like, I mean, anybody else come and read my work, they would think, oh, she's being open. But I know that I was holding back. And now I'm starting to notice that again, like certain things was like before where I'm like, well, I wouldn't hesitate to publish that before. Why am I hesitating now to publish it? So that goes to show I'm still learning things about myself too. I'm still like transforming. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm like, it's not where I started at, and
Yeah.
me doing this type.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Would you like to finish what you were going to say?
No, just I mean, honestly, I enjoy doing this, being creative in different forms. And it wasn't until I really started peeling back the layers that I discovered, like, okay, maybe this is more aligned with the person, the woman that I want to become. It's not, going from a background of like audit and accounting to going to this. And it's scary to a business owner and different, that's a whole nother thing. So, I'm not foreign to this whole transformation thing.
Yeah, you sound like okay. So you started out as a business person, more business auditing, all that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
and now you're getting into the inner workings of the woman's heart and soul, and the
Yeah.
personal transformation is beautiful. There was something I wanted to say, mention that about oh gosh, what was it? La, la, la. Brain, come back to me. You were talking about oh, it's gone now.
It's gone. It's okay. Maybe you
Gone.
were supposed to say it or it'll come back
It
around
might
again.
come back. It might come back. But we're
Yeah.
getting around to about the halfway point before I really start to expire. And I know that you have some questions you wanted to ask me, and so I wanted to kind of switch gears here
Mhm.
and see if you wanted to share any of the questions that you had for me.
Yeah, and I'm a notes girl. I was telling Jessica when we were talking prior to that I have notes and it kind of keeps me on track because if not, I'll kind of ramble. But I did research on you and I saw that your very first article and it was kind of talking about like the Rets thing, I believe. And then it kind of went into like talking about writing. And I was trying to find like a common thread for us. And it was a line that you used. I'm going to see if I can find that line because I like that line and I related it. It was okay, here it is. Reading my writing would nourish my sense of self, of purpose. And I said that's the common denominator, not just writing as a craft, but writing as a tool for self discovery, healing, and finding your footing when life feels disjointed. And I'm like, that's it. Because I know you write like kind of different. It's more like sci fi, like fantasy, and mine is more in the end of like reflective writing and stuff like that. So I was like, I need to bring that up. That's how the connection is. But I do have some questions.
Well, can I address that one
Sure,
first?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Um, I have written lots of self-reflective writing.
Mhm,
In fact, I have a whole blog. I have a whole website for decades. Close to oh, maybe 15 years. I
mhm,
was doing mostly that. I've been a massage therapist, a yoga instructor, holistic healing, herbalist, all of this personal growth, transformation for that was my whole career. And I was trying to run an online business. Well, I did. I ran an online
mhm,
business for a long time. And a lot of my writing was very self-reflective, personal growth oriented. I also did all of my poetry was very much personal growth oriented. Along the way there, I did, sort of autobiographical type of storytelling writing, more prose like that
mhm,
sometimes. And then I also dabbled in some fiction, like taking like mythological characters and rewriting their story. I did a whole series of stories about Persephone and imagining her world being completely different
Mhm.
than what we think we know about the story of Persephone, right? And other and you know, I've written a lot about deities, goddesses, and
Mhm.
mythological stories, and rewritten those stories to reflect different viewpoints and belief systems that I would like to evolve those stories into. And so I've written all different kinds of writing. Right now, I'm doing two channels or sections, they're called, on
Mhm.
Substack. One is my nonfiction, reflective writing, personal growth through writing channel, which this live is part of, Ecology of a Writer. So those that piece that you read and all
Mhm.
the pieces I've posted so far are my reflections, me sharing my journey of writing, which happens to be right now. I'm super passionate about the second section of my Substack, which is the Roots of Time, which is fiction, fantasy fiction, eco fantasy fiction, and I've coined a new term. I don't know if I've coined it, but I came up with it this morning. I might not be the first one to call it
Mhm.
this, but I'm calling it fractal fiction, which is
Hmm.
allowing a more of a fractal structure instead of a linear structure with the fiction. And I just posted an article about that, um, where because I've gotten into this world building where I'm just following prompts on World Anvil, which is a world building platform, and the prompts are you know, encouraging you to develop all kinds of details about your world, and it's very different than writing a story that goes from beginning to end and you're following a main character through
Mhm.
this scene and that scene, and even if you go to the past it still fits into the linear timeline of this character's story. But I've read other articles. I've read fiction where it doesn't follow that linear structure, and we realized this morning, oh, that's fractal fiction, where it grows like a tree. Right, the world is the trunk of the tree, and then there's all these branches that branch out in this fractal structure, branching smaller and smaller branches, and the same thing happens underground with the roots of the tree. It's a fractal structure, and that's what's happening with my novel series. I thought it was going to be a novel series, but again, that's linear, you know, several
Mhm.
linear things, which those are just branches of all of the same tree, those different storylines branching off of the trunk of the same tree, which is the world that they all take place in.
Yeah,
So
go
yeah.
ahead. It's funny how I was listening to you and I was thinking when you were saying it, I'm like, it's interesting to see writers evolve. And I was kind of curious when you were saying that you kind of did different things, self reflective pieces, poetry, and stuff. And my mind automatically went to like, like what was she going through around that time? Do you feel like that was a time where you felt like you were transforming into something else and you were kind of writing to kind of like reflect that, like that was like a transformative period of your life? Because now it seems like you're moving from that more into the sci-fi fantasy.
Well, I wouldn't say that the sci-fi fantasy writing is any less transformative
Mm-hmm.
in any case, in any way, shape, or form. Sci-fi fantasy writing and reading is powerfully
Mm-hmm.
transformative because for me as a sci-fi fantasy writer,
Okay.
I'm writing about worlds that I imagine as possible. I'm imagining possibilities that bring me tremendous joy.
Mm.
I'm imagining ways that the world might heal and change, the whole world, not just me. I'm
Mm.
imagining ways that my characters might grow and change. And imagining those possibilities in my
Mm.
fictional world helps me to imagine more possibilities for my own growth and transformation and supports my own growth and transformation. I can't tell you how many fiction books I've read that were deeply transformative experiences for me just reading the book.
That's interesting because when you were saying that, it made it seem like the more self-reflective pieces that didn't like incorporate fiction, I mean the sci-fi and stuff, that was more internal. And now what you're doing now is more external because you're talking about now where it's like creating worlds and how you want the world to be. And so that's really interesting. It's kind of like that bridge. So I see what you're saying.
I wouldn't say that either one is more internal or
Mm,
more external at all. It
okay.
might seem like that, but it's not. Like the
Mm,
same process happens when I'm doing self-reflection for a poem, for example. When a poem is welling up inside of me, there's feelings that I want to express, say about my peach tree. Okay, I have a love affair with.
okay.
Okay,
All right, that I like
if
that.
anyone has ever had a peach tree that they care for, you will understand exactly what I'm saying. Okay. When I eat my peaches, all is right with the world. And that's not my normal state of being, right? I try to have that be my state of being, but when I'm eating peaches, it's definitely that state of being. So
Mhm,
right now it's peach season. I'm eating lots of peaches. All is well with the world. Okay. When I write a poem about my peach tree, I
mhm,
feel these feelings well up inside of me about the peach tree and all of the metaphors that it brings up
mhm,
for me, all the ways that all is right with the world. I feel all of that. It comes up and I need to find words for it.
mhm,
Thing happens with the fiction writing. The ideas well up inside of me. I wake up in the middle of the night or in the
mhm.
morning, and there's an idea, and I've got to find words for it. It's the same kind of internal welling up and
Okay.
pouring out, just like a tree grows, right? It's
Mhm,
internal, it's underground, right? The roots are pulling nutrients up from the earth through the trunk and up and out into peaches.
mhm.
Peaches.
That was good.
So it's both. It's internal and external, right? It's like
Yeah.
these internal imaginings, these ideas about what this world might be, or what my world, my personality, my growth, my development might be is the same as the world that I'm building is growing and developing.
Mhm,
The same. It's all the same process of letting it swell up inside of me and develop and turn into words that can be put on a page and
yeah.
then shared, for me, like some writings I just will, are lost in notebooks that got lost or eaten by the rats that for
Mhm.
right. Some writings I wrote as a kid got eaten by the rats and they'll
Mhm.
never be shared, right? But they did get shared initially with
Yeah.
somebody. Um, and other writings are meant to be shared with as many people as possible. That's how I feel about my fiction is that it has a life of its own. I'm responding to the call of the story that wants to be told.
Mhm,
An instrument for that story to be
mhm,
told. Um, I'm the writing implement that something greater than myself is using to write the story and put it into the world, if you will. And
mhm,
And so I'm responding to that call. I'm doing my job to put that story on paper and on the internet and make that story available. And that story will support me in return in whatever way that it can through, paid subscribers or people buying the books or whatever ways that that story supports me. But ultimately, it supports me through me being transformed and provided with joy and nourishment all along the way through the whole process of writing and publishing and like that. Um, so my hope is, and it's very much that way because I'm in a lot of ways using it as a healing process. Just the process of
yeah.
writing a complex world with a complex universe is exercising my brain in an important way. My Alzheimer's and dementia runs in my family.
Mm,
And as I'm getting older and as I work with patients, I'm a physical therapy assistant at a nursing home, and I work with patients all the time with Alzheimer's and dementia. And, I'm very motivated to prevent for as much as possible. It's very preventable and treatable if you
mhm,
catch it early So I'm going through a whole program with a coach and blood tests and all this stuff to catch anything early that I might be at risk for dementia and Alzheimer's. And one of the main treatments is developing something called cognitive reserve.
Hmm.
And you develop cognitive reserve by learning new things and exercising your
Yeah.
brain in complex ways. So creating this complex world, this fractal world
Hmm.
where I've got to keep track of all the different connections. My husband's blown away. Like I'm making connections between my real life world and the world of Alteria too, because
Hmm.
the way the story goes is that that's a future version of Earth.
Hmm.
And I've even gone so far as to research geological projections for the planet's geography and made my map based on that. My world map for Alteria is based on projections of how the geography of the planet will change in 3,000 years. And
Hmm.
my particular area where I live, I've made projections of how the geology will change and what the geography will look like. Um, Geological changes that change the geography of the location. And that's the map. And then I'm saying that the people in the story are our descendants, and we can connect to them through the um, memory that's held in the plants and the land and like that, and through our bodies and
Yeah.
through the mycelial network, which is the nervous system of the planet. And so, and that's how we traveled through time too. The future people learn how to use the mycelial network to travel through time and come back to our time and influence us towards more ecological harmony into the future. So I'm weaving together our current day and the future fantasy world that I'm writing about, right? So it's just
Yeah.
all branches weaving together. My brain, I have got some cognitive reserve, let me tell you.
But it's interesting. I was listening to everything you're saying, and it was making me think about this manuscript that I'm sitting on, and I'm gonna probably release it soon.
Oh, is this
But
a fiction manuscript?
so no, no, it's
Oh,
but
no.
honestly, I was nervous to like release this.
Uh-huh.
Like I read the book, I won't even really, just to be honest, read the whole manuscript through. I probably
Uh-huh.
need to, because it was really stepping out more on like spirituality and different things like that. And not talking about religion, but like how I like once thought like God was maybe like how when you're younger, like in the sky, it's some unreachable person, and then how that kind of involved. And then it talks about grief, but in that I'm being really vulnerable, and it's digging deeper, if that's even possible for me. And it's kind of like when I was writing that book, and even after, it's like, and kind of I feel like with your book too, it's for a bigger purpose, even though, and it feels like I was almost inspired, like it was beyond me, like that creativity flowed to me. And I
Mhm.
was able, because I remember certain pieces in that book, like getting up late at night and feeling like, okay, I have to write this, and then writing it down. Like I
Mhm.
think I have something in a book called Indigo Child, and it's different topics like that. And it was like, and how it was flowing so freely. And then, once it, and, I was able to write it fairly quickly. And even though to me, like, it's like, I don't know if I really want to release this, but I feel like it's bigger than me. Like it needs to be released because
Right,
there's a bigger purpose to it. And I feel like what you're saying and with what you're doing and what you're working on, it's something bigger. Once it's
right.
like you understand? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just like I was saying, I'm just this little pen. I'm a pen.
Hmm.
Right? Or I'm a typewriter, okay? Or I'm a keyboard, right? I'm
Hmm.
a laptop. And then so through me, through my writing and my imagination, the ideas of Alteria are being transmitted to the world, and I'm finding ways to do that. So it's super fun. I'm like,
Hmm.
the problem is, okay, here's the problem. All
Okay.
right. For my brain health, I'm also supposed to get a good, solid, uninterrupted 8 hours of sleep every night to reduce inflammation.
Yeah.
But when my cognitive reserve imagination ideas are waking me up at 3 a.m. And insisting that I write them down, the two
Mhm.
brain health things are at cross purposes. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But it's funny. I feel like, and I'll do this a lot. When I feel inspired, I'm like, I gotta write it down. Even if that's like using the notes app on my phone.
right.
And it's like, because especially when it's flowing so freely, it's like, I gotta put it down. It doesn't matter the time. So probably the same thing with you. You feel like,
You know what? It helped me this morning. I did exactly that. I just
hmm
put the title
okay.
on a new Google Doc, right? I
hmm
just put the title of, I opened several new Google Docs with the title of the three or four new different articles I need to write. Oh my God. Oh, geez.
But let me
Yeah.
see. I have another. Let me see. I think it's
YR Abisi is saying in the comments about
take CBD.
yeah, herbal remedies for sleep. Actually, that doesn't work for me. Okay. That makes me get up and clean the house while
Mm.
trying to teach my husband a second language. Okay. So it doesn't work for me. Okay. I don't care what variety, it doesn't work. Okay. I take passion flower instead, and that does help me go back to sleep. So, yes.
I think we kind of touched base on this, and this was actually one of my questions. For someone like me and the women I write for who never thought gaming was their world, what would you want us to know about what world building actually feels like from the inside?
Mm.
Mm.
Well, I think I shared some of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So world building is like this, for me right now, it's like this world wants to be known, and it's using me as an as an implement, right? A writing
Mhm.
implement. And it's this fractal experience of the world being the trunk of the tree and all these
Mhm.
branches, like I was talking about, and the growth of a tree like that. And I feel like our human biology has somewhat of a tree-like structure to it, right?
Mm.
If you
Yeah.
stand with your arms up overhead and your feet on the ground, it's this flowing upward of energy out through the hands, right? As I'm typing
Mhm.
on my keyboard, there's the energy that's flowing upward from the wisdom of the earth through my feet and out through my hands of this world that I'm imagining as possible. And so, as far as gaming and how that ties into all of that, and for people who haven't done any kind of role play gaming, whether that's video games or tabletop role play games or live action role playing games, if you haven't dabbled in any of that, it might be hard to imagine the the benefits of gaming when we're trying to stay focused and serious. And I'm with you on that. For a long time, I didn't
Mhm.
do all that, but then uh, okay, folks are saying they need to go. Good to see you here, Galactic Writer. Um,
Mhm.
okay, YR, you're making scientific fractal. Gotcha. Okay. Intracellular signal transduction pathways also branching out from the receptors. That's right. Thanks for joining us and putting your comments in there. So what I was saying was, now you got to pull me back.
It's okay.
Comment. Oh yeah, gaming. So if
Mhm.
you haven't experienced role play gaming, for me, what happened was I realized that at a certain point, um, that I needed more fun, more joy, more frivolity, more
Mm.
play. I needed more play in my life.
Yeah.
Needed to have hobbies. And that was a personal growth thing for me because for my whole life, like I had said, I was very focused on personal growth and transformation to, overcome the challenges from my childhood
Yeah.
aces and all of that. And to make space in my life for play and joy was a big change. And so that's when in my 50s I started playing video games and bought myself my own video game consoles. I never had invested in toys as an adult. How many toys do people spend money on as adults? I mean, people have boats, motorcycles, fancy cars. People spend tons of money on toys. And I had never done that my whole adult life. I was very serious.
But I think it is true because I was thinking about me when you start reflecting and doing self discovery, something in you does become more serious.
Yes,
Like, and I'm seeing that, like I do, and then trying to have my own business. It's like it's a lot of work, a lot
it
of
is.
reflecting, a lot of writing, but it's like it's not a lot of time for like joy or doing the things that I love to do. And now that's why I feel like I'm at the tail end. Of course, I'm always going to be evolving, but it's like now I want to do fun stuff again. Like
There you
before
go.
all of this started, it was like I
Yeah.
would like shopping or whatever.
Yeah, and arts and crafts or things like that.
Exactly.
And so, you know, both my husband and I have had over the past period of time a deliberate choice of let's find things that we enjoy doing that are fun, that are lighthearted, that
Hmm.
bring us joy. And gaming is a big part of that. So, not only gaming with role play gaming, where you sit down and do collaborative storytelling. That's basically what it is. These role play games, tabletop role play games, create structures for groups of people to sit down and tell a story together. And it is a blast. And that's what I hope to provide in this fractal fiction because I'm writing it in the second person, which is what a role play gaming leader, which is called the game master, okay? The leader of the game starts the story off by saying, you find yourself, oftentimes, you find yourself in a tavern to start these role play games. They typically start in a tavern, and that's where you meet these other
Mhm.
characters that we're playing the game with. And you introduce yourself, and everybody comes up with a character that they are playing. They're role playing somebody different than themselves, maybe even a different species,
Hmm,
right?
that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah, so you, for example, Julia, might decide that your character in the game is a mermaid or a sentient unicorn or a an elf from the forest
Hmm.
with pointy ears, or a halfling or a pixie or whatever, a fairy, whatever
Hmm.
kind of fantasy character you want to play. And then you come up with the name for your character and you imagine how your character looks. And then, and it's very therapeutic. In fact,
Yeah.
there are psychologists that use tabletop role play gaming as a therapeutic process for
Hmm.
people because what ends up happening is that it's an easy way for us to access feelings and ways of being that we would never allow ourselves to even admit were part of our personality in real life.
That's interesting.
And then it allows you to express those feelings and ways of being in a safe environment because that's just my character getting all angry and walloping that person on the head. You know,
Okay. Okay.
I would never do that,
Hmm.
right? That's why a lot of people really love the battling. I think of a lot of role play games have battles, and you might have seen like there's a lot of people who do live action role playing, and they will
Yeah.
enact medieval battles, and they have like swords and stuff, and they that they don't they're like rubber swords or foam padded swords that they don't hurt
Yeah.
each other, but
I, it's,
they go out there and and I think it's very therapeutic because, anger and violence is something that you can land in jail if you act it out in real life, right?
yeah. Yeah. I actually learned about that. Like it was this office space I was renting, and this girl was telling me about it. Something what you were describing, where it was like I don't know if it was kind of like the medieval times or something like
Right,
that.
yeah.
and
Mhm.
they had this area where they would go and they would dress up and different things like that
Yep.
and reenact and role play. I thought it was interesting though. I was like, huh, that's
Yeah.
something different.
In fact,
Hmm.
there's these whole places that put on these fairs called the Renaissance fairs, and
Hmm.
they dress up like, medieval European medieval stuff, and there may be, I don't know if there's any from other cultures from different places, but most of them are from European feudal times, right? The
Hmm.
kings, the queens, and all of that. And then some of them, like, there's also like Civil War role players that go and reenact the Civil War all the time. History buffs that do historical um, scenarios and go and reenact them and stuff like that. People love doing those role play things in all different ways. So
Hmm.
so role play gaming is a great way to have fun, and also it's very therapeutic. So that's what I'm attempting to engage people with in this fractal fiction,
So it's
because
like,
you also kind of choose your own adventure too. I don't know if you've ever read those choose your own adventure books, but
hmm.
what those were is it was a book, a paperback book, and you'd start reading the book, and at the end of the first chapter it would say, okay, do you think the main characters should do this or this? If you want them to do this, go to page such and such and keep
Oh
reading.
yeah. Hmm.
If you want them to do option 2, go to other page such and such and start reading from there. And
Hmm.
and so that was the choose your own adventure book, right? Well, people are doing that on Substack, where at the end of the first installment they say, do you want this or this or this to happen? And then whichever one gets the most votes, they that's the next story that they post, right? The next
Hmm.
installment of the story. But mine is a fractal. It's not linear. Okay. I'm going to say, do you want to explore this, or this part of the world?
Hmm.
And if not, is there some other part of the world down here? See that pinky finger?
Hmm.
What's that? And that's going to be, how in a poll like that, if it says other, you have to write in the thing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So that's going to be a write in. Okay. And every single one of those options that gets a vote, including the write in one, I'm going to publish
Mhm.
something on it. So the person who says, I want the character to, uh, I want to go to this other city. Yep,
Mhm.
the thing I wrote about that other city. So the options I give are probably going to be things I've already written about. And then the other one, uh, and then I when the other one is a prompt for me to
Mhm.
write something new about the world, which is just fine with me.
Which is interesting because I have another question for you, which I think. So I remember reading one of your writings. It was not the most recent one with the peach tree, but the one before that. And so my question is, most people told you that it could not be done. What made you go ahead anyway? And what does it feel like to look back on that decision now?
Well, you know, I can't stop myself.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I'm the type of person when someone, good or bad, says something can't be done, it gives me more determination to try to do it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And I think what you're referring to is I talked about how when I was initially so the whole story of Alteria, the world that my fiction stuff is happening in, just
Mhm.
briefly comes from a tabletop role playing game, a Dungeons and Dragons game with some friends, some local friends, and but they have been nonviolent conflict resolution practitioners for their whole lives. Right, they're in their 60s and 70s. Okay, they're not
Yeah.
needing to do any kind of imaginary violence. They don't like violence. They wanted to like befriend the monster by feeding them and then adopting them as their pet. And
Mhm.
so they didn't want to be killing stuff, right?
Mhm.
And so I said, oh, and my husband was like, how am I going to lead? Because Dungeons and Dragons was particularly, that's one of the things is the gritty
Yeah.
battles and all of that, right? My husband's like, I don't know. He was leading the game, and he's like, I don't
Yeah.
know if I can lead a game for these guys. They want to do nonviolent conflict resolution. I'm like, I can. And so I started writing The World of Altaria, which the majority of people in Altaria are have learned that nonviolence
Mhm.
is the way to go. And there's cooperative, you know, collaborative, ecologically balanced and harmonious society, and how it got there from where we are now is part of the story, and then the people who haven't gotten there yet are also part of the story. So there's definitely conflict because there's people
Mhm.
that think this is a horror scene, right?
Yeah.
The fact that of what's going on, uh,
Mhm.
and they want to violently dominate everybody who's trying to do it different, right? And so
Yeah.
they were out there like destroying cities and stuff, and then the nonviolent conflict resolution people are like, they're really sick. How do we heal them? You know?
Is that like utopia though, where it's kind of like a place where it's like it's no violence, it's kind of just happy. Am I thinking about the right terms with that?
Utopia is one word for it. It's also, you know, um, it's also based on evolution and how it tends to go. So, um, I listened to a scientist at one point who studied um, microbiological archaeology.
Mhm.
Okay, so she studied the microbiome, little
Mhm.
tiny organisms in the archaeological history of the planet. And what she discovered is that as they evolved, they would overconsume until the point of almost consuming themselves into extinction. Because if they overconsumed their food source,
Mhm.
there would be no more food source and they would all die. So when they would get to that overconsumption point, to the point where they were almost going to be going extinct, there would be a survival instinct that would make them evolve into a more cooperative model where they stopped over consuming and started cooperating.
It's
And
interesting.
that's the only way that advanced life was able to come into being, because your body, my body, we are simply made up of cooperative microorganisms working together to create a more advanced being. So this scientist was saying that all living beings go through that evolutionary phase. She called it like the teenage years of evolution,
Mhm.
where they're over consuming. And that's what we're doing as humans right now.
Mhm.
And then at a certain point, in order to survive, we will have to shift to cooperation. So it's not about some unreachable utopia. Like utopia has this connotation that it's impossible and we'll never get there, and it's just a futile exercise to imagine utopia. And I've read lots of utopian novels. It's a great genre. Okay. I love utopian novels, and there's always some problem that they have to overcome,
But
right?
yeah, it's when I'm talking about this with you, it's making me think of this movie, and I can't remember the title, but I believe Bruce Willis was in it, and it's where they kind of had the people, you know, in theory it seemed good, like the people were controlled and they were to act a certain way, and they no violence and different things like that. But I think it kind of went too far where the people felt like they didn't have freedom and it was too rigid, so
Right.
then it caused like a rebel. I need to look that up later. I really wish I could remember the name of the movie, but Bruce Willis was.
Unfortunately, a lot of the mainstream depictions of utopia
Mhm.
have that edge to it where
Mhm.
they're, and I think that's deliberate. That's the only
Okay.
way that utopian ideas can make it uh into mainstream media, is to say it's not really possible for this to happen because our dark side is always going to come through, and the people in charge are always going to be, you know, power hungry
Mm.
and all of that. And that's just, and there's a narrative that says that's just how we are as humans. And that's why all of the utopian stories in the mainstream media present it that way, is to say, you just have to accept that that's how we are as humans. I beg to differ. That's how some humans are, and I think they're sick.
I think
And
it's
and then
trauma.
it's a trauma response, right? And when we connect to ancient, like a book that I recommend anyone who's interested in my series, my fiction, a formative book for me was called The Chalice and the Blade by Rianne Eisler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And she's an archaeologist who took a different tack. She looked at all the archaeological evidence. You know, there's all this archaeology of evidence of like goddess worshiping cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, let's look at these cultures from the women's point of view, because it was
Mm-hmm.
all male archaeologists before she came along, right? That
Mm-hmm.
were interpreting what these goddess sculptures meant, right? All the men were like, what is it like? She's like, let's imagine what the women were thinking and doing with
Mm-hmm.
it. She looked at it all, and she said the evidence shows that for 300,000 years, humans lived in peaceful harmony with each other and the ecology around them. There was no indication of ecological damage. There was no indication of mass violent killings and wars and things like that. Until suddenly there was some kind of environmental cataclysm that changed the weather cycle, weather patterns, and everything of the planet, and created this trauma response. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, after that, there were these roving bands of violent perpetrators that went around because of resource scarcity and trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this collective trauma response, creating all of this violent reaction. Um, so she says, okay, so that's happened. However, there's this impulse that wells up throughout history of loving cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
And see it throughout history in all cultures around the world, that that impulse swells up and tries to grow again.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of being that we know how to do. And then it gets violently suppressed by the domination culture, the trauma response domination culture.
I think it's fear too. I think people, fear what they don't understand, fear
Yeah,
that
there's
they're
all
going to be controlled. It's yeah.
yeah, that's all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that right, so that you don't control me, I'm going to dominate you.
Mm-hmm.
But that is within that domination based paradigm. When you activate a partnership based paradigm and no longer need to have power over someone but can share power between them, then that fear goes away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to overpower you. We can share power. When I give you some of my power, it actually nourishes me,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And if I learn how to do that, if we learn how to do cooperative, collaborative sharing of power instead of in partnership, instead of domination. And that takes some learning, that takes some
Oh yeah.
practice, that takes some reflection, that takes some growth. Um, but so that book was is hard to follow because of, you're reading all the violent stuff
Mm-hmm.
and the trauma stuff, and you're like, oh my god, how are we going to get out of this? But ultimately, in the end of the book, she's like super optimistic, because she says that impulse, that survival impulse to find cooperation, harmonious cooperation, is the only thing that is going to let us survive, because violent domination is taking us down the road of self destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And our survival instinct, she's like, I put my bet on the survival instinct. The survival instinct, just like this other scientist I was talking about with the microorganisms,
Mm-hmm.
the survival instinct is stronger than all of that. And ultimately, the survival instinct will require us to learn collectively how to be cooperative, with not only between humans, but also with nature. Instead
Yeah.
of trying to dominate nature, we need to cooperate with nature and be harmonious with nature. So that's what those are some of the fundamental principles that my book is, my fiction is illustrating, if you will.
I was reading some of the comments too. That's why sometimes I'll look over.
I know, me too. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
trying to say what I'm saying, and then somebody's saying something interesting in the comments. I'm like, wait, wait,
Yeah.
wait. Why are you keep messing up my? No, I'm teasing. I want to see what you're saying, but then I'm in the middle of saying something else. Yeah, so I try to comment and follow you. No, no, you're don't be sorry. I'm glad you're part of the conversation. We're just trying to keep my. There's only so much of the fractal that my little piddly brain can actually do at any given moment. So it's much easier if I can write one branch here and focus on that, and then go and write another branch. Like
Mhm.
I can't do all the branches at once.
But I like that. I like how it blends where you're not serious, like, and it mixes in joy and it's
Oh,
healing too. I
yeah,
really like that because
yeah,
sometimes I feel like what I do is I feel like I'm more serious with it, especially because it's serious topics, honestly,
yeah,
and if it's a way where you can kind of blend in some joy or make it fun while you're doing it, I think it helps.
yeah. Well, I've definitely had to make it a game. Like some of the, you know, going back to online marketing, for example, like
Hmm.
building an audience. I was like dreading that. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I did so much of it for so many years. I tried to go back on Facebook. I can't go back on Facebook. Nothing wrong, nothing bad happened on
Hmm.
Facebook. It was just such a grind for so many years. I loved it while I was doing it, and then I was done,
Hmm.
you know. I made a couple of posts about my Substack on Facebook, but I can't do Facebook anymore.
That's a whole social media.
No.
That's my biggest thing now because it's like I'm trying to put myself out there more, and marketing is a big component of that. And sometimes social media can seem so overwhelming. Then it's like the type of content and things that I produce. I'm like, well, what is it really good for? You know, it's kind of I feel like with Instagram and different things, and I like it, but it's more quick pace. And I feel like I'm coming from the angle of I'm trying to tell a story, but if
Right.
your hook's not good, and if I don't grab you in the first 1 or 2 seconds, then you're swiping up or scroll. So it can be a lie. It is.
And then the way people present themselves, it's not honest
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes. On Instagram and Facebook, there's these presentations of, like, the idealized life
Mm-hmm.
that people are trying to say that they have achieved. And first of all, I don't believe it. I don't think it's honest.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, I don't, yeah, it's just not, it makes me start to question my life and whether I'm meeting that, I'm susceptible to that. Am I idealized enough? Right.
Well,
And
honestly, I think sometimes people do that because they think that's what people want to see.
I know.
And truthfully, and I'm gonna be honest, if we're being honest, sometimes people do want to see that neat and tidy when it's more raw, vulnerable, it's not put together.
Yeah.
It's like people don't want to see that, or it takes away somehow. So that's why they present that, and they feel like they can get more views or whatever, or
Right.
put in a product that they're selling when it's packaged that way. It
Yeah.
kind of, I know I'm referencing movies, but it kind of reminds me of this movie, either Keeping Up with the Jones or Meet the Jones, where they were like kind of paid actors and they presented as like a family unit, but they looked neat and polished in a certain way, but they were really trying to sell stuff too. So it was kind of like I'm wearing this shirt and I have this look where people would kind of be asking about it and wanting it more because, if that makes sense, because it's like I'm giving it to you in a way that I think you'll like, that you're more receptive to. And
Mhm.
it's easier, and it's done in a casual way where you don't really quite even notice that it's being done.
Sneaky.
Mark, it's funny. With sales, it's a thing with me. But I think with different jobs, like they thought I would be good at sales, which probably if I really wanted to, but I don't like sounding like a sales person or like I'm just, you have to get this. I'm just kind of like, hey, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But it's funny when you be in those type of environments, you learn different things and different tactics and ways how people try to get you, like, I guess, sweeten you in to get you to buy something. It's very interesting, you know.
I know. But YR says it's definitely a lot of marketing requirements that gets, I guess, gets overwhelming. Dot dot dot. I
Hmm.
say, he says, they say, screw the first line. Let's just write honestly and let the chips fall where they may. I say, yes, let's. Of course, let's do that.
You know, that's what I struggle with because it's kind of like if it's a message I want to convey, I still think about, well, how can I say it in a way where it will be perceived well, where it's, I don't know how to describe it. So, like, even with this writing piece that I'm going to be releasing on Tuesday, it was like, how can, and it's different things that's kind of going on in the world today. How can I package it in a way where it's not like no one's blaming no one, but it's like, let's look at from a higher perspective. So when I do writing, sometimes, you know, I am aware of that. So I'll kind of start it off with saying something that happened with me or something I'm kind of working through, and then kind of roll it into, well, what am I trying to convey? I'll kind of then piece that in and then provide some type of ending, because the truth is, when I write stuff, sometimes I feel like, yeah, this is really valuable information and I want you to be able to see it, and I don't want to lose your attention. So it's like, well, how can I grab you? Then once I have you, then it's like, okay, well, it's like poetry, honestly. Let's just be honest. Poetry, like I was telling you when we first started, we was talking about how it's sweetener and the adjective and the words, and it just flows so good. And then it's kind of like once I have you in, and it's like, okay, now.
Now we're going to drop the real stuff, aren't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Julia, this has been lovely. I really appreciate you. Our my we did our first, both of our first
Yay.
live, and YR. Thank you so much for sticking with us, and everybody else who joined us. I think Alexander joined us just recently. Thank you if you're still
Mhm.
with us. I know the folks that joined us earlier have they said their goodbyes. Thank you so much for joining us. YR says, I feel you, Julia. I think it's good to start with the insane draft first, then
Yeah.
cover it with reason.
Let's pull it back. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, we just got to get it flowing, right? Get those
Mhm.
juices flowing, and then like look at it and say, okay, but you know what? I don't tend to do a whole lot of editing. I just like put a few extra commas in and then publish. So I might be just doing the insane draft. I'm just putting it out there. Oops.
Right.
Oh dear. Oh yeah. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for anyone who's watching the recording.
Mhm.
We'll check back and see, try to follow up with your comments. And I think both of us, Julia, did you say you're releasing a new article on Tuesday?
Yeah, on Tuesday it'll be out 9:30 a.m. Eastern
Wow,
time.
you have a time.
I'm
My
trying.
I'm not sure what time I'm gonna be posting the first installment here on Substack of the Roots of Time fiction fractal fiction series. Okay, but keep an eye out for that. You can subscribe to both of us to hear, to get notifications about when those new articles are coming out, and pay attention for Julia's offering. Could you say the name of that one
Mhm.
again
The
coming up?
glow up. The glow up reset.
The Glow Up Reset, full of wonderful workbooks, um, who you were, who you are now, and who you're becoming. Ooh, love a good workbook. I love
Yeah.
it. Writing journal workbooks, and with the mutual support of the participants and Julia herself. Thank you so much, Julia, for joining me on this, and I'm looking forward to continuing our writing journeys together.
Thank you for having me, Jessica. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
Mhm.
All right, that's all for now, folks, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.